going back to the time travel thing. So, let me ask you this. If Crystal Skull didn't come out, would this be more jarring? Because for me, it was a little bit more palatable because we already got aliens. I'm sorry. I mean, interdimensional beings. So, yeah, 2008 Crystal Skull really jumped the shark in a science fiction way. And time travel is a little bit more science fiction adjacent. I mean, don't get us wrong. Like Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, they're all dealing with magic and fantastical things that are literally unbelievable. So what do you think? If Crystal Skull didn't come out, would it be like, what the hell? Or is it like, they had aliens,
Yeah, that's a really good point, and I think you're 100% correct. The first three movies were fantastical, obviously, and supernatural, all that stuff. But it was things that the audience were aware of, right? The Ark of the Covenant is a known thing. Alien skulls and Archimedes' dial to make time travel, not known commodities.
Hey, what's poppin', corn dogs, all you corn kernels and poppy doggies? Welcome back. It's another episode of Just Play It, the best movie reviewing podcast that is literally out there. So we've heard from our families. I'm one of your hosts. I'm Captain Pop. I am a concession stand kid. I'm a movie lover. Across the table from me is my brother from another mother, Captain Corn Dog, Colonel Corn Dog, the Chief Corn Dog Officer himself. It's my best friend, Nick Justice. He's here. He's with me. And we're excited to be here with you.
Thanks for the introduction. As always, James, you knock it out of the park. James said it best. I am the corn dog, the chief corn dog, the head honcho, if the head was actually a corn dog instead.
Or a honcho.
James, we're at a spooky season. We're into turkey season, fall season. Leaves are changing. It's getting nippy. Put on a sweater when you go outside kind of season. I want to just say thank you to you. I know you busted your tail. You are our editor-in-chief with all of our podcasts. And, 4 podcasts in 4 weeks heading up to Halloween was quite the feat. So 5 podcasts. That's right. We started with Fatal Attraction. I'm sorry.
Sell me short.
I'm sorry.
5.
I'm sorry. So just want to give a shout out to you. And I know the listeners appreciate it. And I very much appreciate it. And I want that on the record, my friend, for how impressive the content you've been putting out in. And we're on YouTube. If you're not listening to us on YouTube or watching us on YouTube, this is a video podcast now. So it takes a little extra time to edit. But trust me, boys, it is worth it. And girls.
I appreciate the appreciation. I love when people are thankful, and it makes me thankful, and it just drives me to do more. Yeah, it was very much out of character for us to do week after week after week. We haven't done that since year 1, and that was before we were doing video pods, so that was a little bit more simple, a little bit more manageable. But yeah, we went hard for spooky season. It was back to back to back to back, 5 weeks in a row. Lots of videos. Lots of editing on audio, Premiere Pro, promos, YouTube, socials. It was a lot, but we love scary movies and horror movies, so we thought it was worth it. And it makes for really good content, really good end of the year content, because we're coming up on the end of the year, which means our annual wrap party episode will be coming up soon, sooner than you think, in December, where we do rankings of all the movies we watch. We do tournaments. We do quizzes. It's a big celebration for the end of the year. And Nick, you said it, the seasons are a-changing. The leaves are falling. So we're getting near the end here. Today, we'll be talking about the last movie in our franchise of the year, which we all know is Indiana Jones. So that's coming to an end. The year's coming to an end. 3 more movies to watch, my friend. Well, one to talk about, 2 more to watch. And then we're already there at the end of the year bash. So make sure you're following us on socials. We're going to be doing polls. We're going to be doing fan votes. A lot of that's going to be on Instagram. So once again, that is at Just Play It Podcast on Instagram, Just Play It Podcast on YouTube, and we're at Just Play It Pod on X. I don't know what happens over there on X. Nick, Not sure you're the X-Man.
Dude, X is it's a wild place right now. I got to tell you. Because it's election season.
Oh,
It's election season on X. Election season on X is if you're
it sounds like you're saying like on Fizz pills, like on ecstasy. Like election season on X is wild.
It's not far off. And if you're not a crazy person who is way too involved in the government and politics, you could have a lot of fun. It's just virtual people watching. And I have the guilty pleasure of loving to read people's comments. And I like when people respond to public figures who clearly did not even write that tweet. Their PR team did. And people are trying to engage with them. It's this whole other side of the world, man. And it's funny. It's sad, but it's funny. Well, James, our podcast season's coming to an end. But the question is the Cinematrix movie streak going to come to an end?
Oh my gosh.
What we got to find out today.
What a transition, Nick. Yes, it is time for our weekly movie quiz. It is Pop Trivia. And we invite everybody to come and play along. Oh, my wife is yelling at the dog. Okay. If you're new to the podcast, or if you just need a reminder, Vulture.com supplies a daily movie quiz called Cinematrix. It is a 3x3 grid quiz. We get 3 actors. We get 3 categories. And we have 9 guesses in total. 9 squares, 9 guesses. So if we miss one, we're not going perfect. Nick, you questioned if we were going to end our streak. We're currently on a 13-week streak of not missing an answer. So that's number 1. Number 2, we're trying to be top percentage of the day. So how do you be top percentage of the day? You need rare answers. So we can think of the ones that'll make us skate by and get that perfect score. We've done it before. We're not above it. But it's all about getting those raries.
That's the white whale. The 1% is the white whale. We've got
it one time. Got it one time. Chasing that high.
Chasing it again. Oh yeah, chasing the dragon, man.
Well, let's go ahead and Ahab it. Nick, who do we have for our actors?
Our actors are Neve Campbell, our girl Anya Taylor-Joy, and Vera Farmiga.
And our categories, Nick, this week are genre, horror, 2-word title, and $100 million worldwide at the box office. Nick, how confident are you feeling? Because I am looking at that last actor's name, and I don't think I know her. Can you click on the photo?
You know her. I know her.
I do? Oh, yes. I do know her.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought we were going to die today. Okay.
No, this is clearly spooky season focused.
As is tradition, highly encouraged, we do like to include movies that we've watched on the podcast, and I can already think of a couple looking at these names and categories. So, Nick, let's go ahead and hit up that square top left. Let's go ahead and start with Neve Campbell, and the genre horror is probably going to be a very popular answer, however, but we did watch Scream last spooky season, speaking of.
Yes, and I know that Neve Campbell is in Scream 2, as well as Scream 3, and I believe Scream 4. I do remember the first Scream did $100 million box office worldwide. I'm not sure about the subsequent Screams.
The following Screams.
That's all I have for Neve Campbell. I'm drawing a blank on anything else she has done post-Scream.
She is the Scream Queen. So, I mean, we Shrek'd it last time we were doing this 2 weeks ago. So, might be just the Scream team over here. Might be time to just sweep the Scream board. And
I'm okay with
what do you think? Scream? So let's plot it out. Scream OG for box office, and horror we can do 3 or 2 because those are going to be fine for 2-word title.
Yeah, I say we'll go 3 for horror, 2 or 4 for 2-word title, and then Scream 1 for 100 million. Yeah, I'm not sure how Cinematrix does the same title of different year, but I think they rebooted it with just the word Scream. So,
well, I think it just takes into account if there's a correct answer to fill it, it'll fill it.
So let's go Scream 3 for horror. What do you think?
Let's do it. All we have is Scream for the Scream Queen herself.
We'll go Scream 3. That's 17%. 2-word title. 17? You want to go Scream 4?
Is she in 4?
I remember when we did Scream. Yeah, she made it this far.
Damn. Still surviving. Oh, just like us. We are surviving. Wow, those posters are very similar.
I'm guessing we're going original Scream here.
We're going OG Scream, playing it safe. I scream, you scream. We all scream because it's 40. Oh, wait. Is that the reboot?
This looks like the reboot, yeah.
What if we wanted the original?
That's what I was saying. Oh, I don't know how Cinematrix handles this, but...
Way to shaft us, Cinematrix. I see you. Whatever. Okay. Moving down to Anya Taylor-Joy. This is a movie we watched this year, which would be Furiosa. That would only suffice for the box office. Horror, I do have a couple, and it's gonna be The Menu and Split. I believe she was in.
She was in Split. She was also in Glass, which I do know actually 100 million worldwide. I had an argument with somebody about that before.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. She was also in a movie from 2014 called The Witch. And I believe we've brought this up on a quiz before. With it might have been Anya Taylor-Joy. But she was in a movie called The Witch. I like Split because I don't think people think of that as a horror movie. And I think we could use The Menu as a 2-word title because I'm not sure I have another 2-word title for her. You might. Or vice versa. We can go Split and The Witch as a 2-word title there.
And we always talk about animated movies. Do you think Super Mario Bros. Would be underthought of for box office?
Well, we have to go Furiosa, right? Do we have to? Because we've
highly encouraged, Nick. Highly encouraged. But if you think Glass
100, it did. I trust me. I don't know why I got into this argument.
I'm not going to argue. I'm not going to argue with you.
Because I liked the Unbreakable Man Split Glass series personally, from an M. Night Shyamalan standpoint, and I was having this argument with somebody, and it made like 108 or something like that.
How did that come up, and why'd you guys get so?
Dude, you've known me for a long time. When I decide to argue about something, it's game over. I will not drop it until I have laid all my cards on the table. And
until
it was
you're
one
victorious.
Of those situations. Yeah, and it was one of those situations.
Poor guy.
Yeah.
Would you say that you were unbreakable in that argument?
Yeah. But Anya Taylor-Joy was not unbreakable.
All right. Well, if Glass is going to be... Well, I don't know. With the 49% from Scream, do you think this is going to be a high percentage? Or is it a moment where it's like, don't give up and keep going?
Let's see what Split and The Witch give us. How about that?
Split and The Witch. Let's do it.
I think Split's a really good one.
For horror, 16.
I would like to do The Witch. I think The Menu is going to be...
Probably popular.
The most popular.
Probably.
Absolutely.
Probably the choice there.
So The Witch is at 23%. So let's go with Furiosa, because I don't think We have to. Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. We're doing it.
Let's hit it.
48%. And
okay, whatever.
That's okay. Okay, so Vera Farmiga actually, I know, has been in quite a few horror movies. She was in The Conjuring 2, I think The Nun 2. I could be wrong about that. She was also in that movie Orphan, where they adopt a little girl who's...
Wow. Okay.
I don't love horror movies. I don't watch them a lot, but there is a YouTube channel, quick shout out, not paid or anything, called Found Flicks. The guy makes really wonderful content, and he does like 20-minute horror movie breakdowns. And I don't want to watch horror movies, but I like doing 20-minute breakdowns of this guy.
You just want to know what happens?
I just want to know what happens. I'm curious. I don't want to go through the whole suspense building process, But I've actually know the plot of a lot of horror movies, having never watched a lot of them.
Fun fact about the corn dog himself. I did not know that.
I'm a man of mysteries.
Dealer's choice for the 20-minute movie man over there.
We'll go Orphan.
13.
It gives us 13%. Okay.
13.
2-word title.
I know her from The Departed.
I do as well. There is one more movie, not to step on you here, buddy, but there's one more that I remember her from. A very underrated movie called The Judge with Robert Downey Jr. and Robert Duvall. Robert Duvall's the judge. His son goes to law school. Dad never accepts him. I think Billy Bob Thornton's also in that one, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. I'm aware of this movie, actually.
Yeah, it's a good movie. It's like Robert Downey Jr. did that amidst all of the Iron Man action, and I think it got overlooked, but it's a really, really good performance by him.
I'd be down for The Judge.
The Judge.
2-word title.
The Judge at 2%. Okay.
It was the perfect selection.
Not like we're fighting for the 1%, but
you never know.
All right.
You never know.
And now we have $100 million box office worldwide. So, we could use The Departed here.
I think that would work.
We can also use...
Here comes a tricky trick out of Nick's bag.
I don't think it's that tricky, but let me preface this by saying I am a fan, you know me, kind of actiony, ridiculous movies. The new iteration of Godzilla and then the Godzilla and King Kong movies.
Okay.
Massive fan of. Huge fan of. And she is one of the... I know. Does that shock you? Godzilla vs. Kong is actually pretty solid. Godzilla King of the Monsters she is in. And I would be appalled if that did not $100 million worldwide.
Well, just to make your little heart happy, let's go ahead and guess Godzilla King of Monsters.
5%. All right.
5%. And we did top 5% of players for the day. That's
surprising to me. So if we didn't go Furiosa and we went maybe Super Mario Brothers, I mean, we might have been top 3.
All right. Well, speaking of, let's look at the most popular answers. And I'm actually seeing OG Scream. Not sure what makes a difference with maybe Scream didn't do it. Let me check the log here. Hold on.
Scream definitely 100 million.
Yeah. It says 173. So.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah.
So
you had that question of how does it decipher which one, and shrug emoji over here.
So could we have put Scream for both then?
Whatever. I mean, we wouldn't want to because it was the most popular, because the most popular for Nev Campbell horror genre is going to be OG Scream. 2-word title is going to be Scream 2, and $100 million at the box office is going to be Scream 2022 one, the new one, whatever. Anya Taylor-Joy, who do we got?
For Anya Taylor-Joy, our most popular horror movie was The Witch. So that was surprising. 2-word title was The Menu, like we had discussed, and 100 million box office would be Furiosa, like we guessed.
Yeah, so we actually switched The Witch, so good on us. Moving down to Vera Farmiga, horror, we have The Conjuring 2. 2-word title, we have The Conjuring. And $100 million at the box office, we have Up in the Air. What was the rarest answers for Nev Campbell, our gal, the Scream Queen?
Nev Campbell, rarest answer for horror is a movie called The Dark. 2-word title, The Dark. And 100 million worldwide box office is Skyscraper with Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Okay. Oh, Glass was the rarest. Okay. That's cool to know we had it. And then we just didn't, but.
We should have just did it. But for the pod, baby, we celebrate ourselves. Because the rarest selections for Anya Taylor-Joy horror is going to be Marrowbone, Viking Quest for 2-word title, And Nick, you said it. You had an argument with some guy about it for probably hours. Glass did $100 million at the box office. Don't you ever talk to Nick about Glass and it not $100 million at the box office.
I'm guessing who the guy who chose this as an answer and made it the rarest answer is the guy that I beat.
You had an argument.
Guaranteed.
And he's like, yes, I've never been so happy to be wrong.
Exactly. All right. And then for Vera Farmiga, our rarest answer for horror was The Nun 2. That was mentioned. 2-word title, Never Forever. And then $100 million
box office.
And then $100 million box office worldwide is The Nun 2.
All right, cool. Hey, another perfect week. 14 in a row. Say it loud, say it proud. We have 2 more movie reviews coming up. So that's 2 more opportunities. Not sure if we'll do the quiz on the Rat Party episode. If it's just going to be, but maybe. We'll see. We have more opportunities to succeed is what I'm trying to get at. But Nick, now it's time to talk about the movie we watched this week. We're going to talk about it. It's the 5th and final, probably. It's the final Indiana Jones movie from our franchise of the year. And Nick, this is directed by James Mangold. So the first Indiana Jones not directed by Steven Spielberg.
That's a red flag for me right there. The second I saw that,
what?
I didn't know about that.
James Mangold's amazing.
I know, but switch it. Nothing against James Mangold. Like James Mangold, fan of the movies that he is a part of. But it's such an iconic character for one director to have been involved in 4 of them spanning 30 plus years.
Walk the Line, 310 to Yuma, Logan, Ford vs. Ferrari. Whoa. The man knows how to direct movies. And
the man makes gold. He's Mangold. And okay, I'm not saying he doesn't.
Well, Spielberg volunteered to step aside, and he actually picked James Mangold to jump in the chair because he likes what he does. And he said, you know what? We need a fresh new take on it for a new generation, because we all know what happens the last time Spielberg directed Indiana Jones, Aliens. So maybe he was like, maybe I need to step away from Indiana Jones and let someone else take the reins. So James Mangold is in the chair. However, we have a familiar face at the helm in front of the camera. It's our man, our hero, the franchise man of the year. It's Harrison Ford. This movie is also going to go ahead and star a friend of the show, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, via Solo, voice the robot of L3, and Mads Mikkelsen, who I know from a lot of things. And the first thing I noticed, Nick, when watching this movie, I said, this movie's in the 2020s. That means half of the people are going to have appeared in some sort of Marvel or Star Wars project. And our top 3 here are all Star Wars. Harrison Ford, Han Solo, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, L3, Mads Mikkelsen, Galen Erso from Rogue One. It's a lot of Disney takes over. That if you're from the past, spoilers for this movie, Disney took over everything.
We also have Antonio Banderas. Making a showing in this film. But I think Mads Mikkelsen is a very underrated actor. I've always liked his stuff. I've always thought he's very good. He kind of comes.
I think he's perfectly rated. I think people know him, and I don't think anyone's got anything bad I'm not as to say about him. Then.
No, but I feel like he should be up there with a fellow German like Christoph Waltz, right? Like they're very classic, stoic, lot of range.
Is he German? I thought he was like
actors. Is he Austrian?
From Denmark
maybe
or something?
Is he? I mean, he played a good German in this one.
I think he's. Let me see. Mads Mikkelsen, Danish.
He's Danish. Okay.
Yep.
But either way, I don't know. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm not as plugged in to what people are saying about actors and movies. But I've always really liked him, and he's in this one action movie. I think it's called Arctic. It's like John Wick, but more brutal. And he stars in that. And it's if you like gory action over the top death movies. High recommendation. High recommendation.
I don't know. I think if you're just European, you could just look German because there's a couple other actually Marvel German adjacent folks. So Toby Jones is in the MCU. He's the little short Hydra guy. He's from the UK. And then actually Thomas Kretschmann, who is the main colonel, the main Nazi colonel in the beginning. I recognized him immediately as Strucker from Avengers Age of Ultron, who basically played the same role. He was a colonel in Hydra and was going after Loki's scepter and had Wanda and Pietro locked up doing experiments on him. So I was thinking a lot of Disney ties here already. James Mangold tie because Boyd Holbrook, he's the kind of that main henchman, the lackey, the little blonde guy on the Nazi team. Recognize him from Logan and Narcos. He kind of plays the same exact role in Logan because he's just the main antagonist chasing down the protagonist. So lots of updated and well-known faces for our generation, I'll say. But Nick, what do we have for dollar signs?
Dollar signs. So we have an estimated 294 million budget. So nice, robust Disney style budget. And box office 384 million worldwide. So we did make money. I would venture to say, without looking at the numbers, this is the lowest percentage return.
I think so, because a lot of them started out with the first one, I think, was 18 million. And it went on to gross 389 million, which is 6 million better than this one. So Raiders gives you a 2,166% return. And then this one is only 130% return. So by the numbers, percentage wise, it is the lowest.
And Crystal Skull, I think, was like 700 million worldwide or something like that. It was, it was a much anticipated return of Indiana Jones. But I feel like with a movie like this, that as soon as you go over that $250 million budget, it's hard to win the percentage game. Trying to make 600 million on 250 million is difficult. But
yeah, I think you need to have I think you literally need to be an MCU to pull that off.
Yeah. MCU, Star Wars.
Maybe Star Wars. I think just peak phase 3 MCU, it was like untouchable. You were going to make your money back. Because I was thinking, this is a really high budget. Is this the highest budget we've had so far ever?
294.
I think it is. It is.
Yeah. By a solid margin. Solo was 275.
Okay. But still, this still beat it. Because when I saw that budget number, I immediately looked up Infinity War and Endgame budget. Infinity War, 321. Endgame, 356 million. The only difference is those two movies alone, on their own, got at least $2 billion. Billion.
With a B.
Endgame was 2019, pre-COVID. I think this has got the COVID bug. Excuse the sickness pun, but it was tough to get a huge draw to the movies post 2020 for some reason. We're still struggling. Some movies are doing it, but I think this one was just, I don't know, the current generation, they were built up on Marvel. So it started in 2008 and it peaked at 2019. It was a homegrown decade, whereas Indiana Jones has fans, but how many of those 12-year-old kids are fans of Indiana Jones today? That's my thoughts on it. It's not a mass appeal. It's just, it's a very popular franchise, but with a lot older crowds. And I think you need everybody to show up if you're going to throw out $294 million.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong. 384 is a damn good return in 2023. But
it's positive.
I think the other factor I think that comes into this is movies are getting shorter releases. And if I'm a fan and I know it's a Disney property and everybody has Disney Plus, I might just wait 5 months and wait for the Disney Plus release. And so there's a lot of trade-off there where before you'd get maybe a 6-month release rollout for a movie like this. And then you're going to have to wait 1.5 to 2 years before you can go to Blockbuster and rent this to see it. So it was you have to get in and see it
There's way
while
more,
you can.
definitely way more hype back in the day.
There's no urgency to go to the movies as much anymore because these movies just get their streaming release so much sooner because there's no distribution involved. So it's just the way that the world works a little bit.
I wonder if there's any back end revenue to that through streaming services or just appeal. You know, Dial of Destiny is going to be available on Disney Plus, so get your subscriptions. So it's hard to gauge those, and it's hard to judge the 80s box office numbers versus today's, especially there's inflation, then there's streaming, there's release. DVD sales are not really a thing anymore. Rentals, maybe rental sales on streaming.
Maybe. I think you sell the rights to the streaming service. So you'd sell the rights to Amazon, and then their rentals, they get to keep the profit on top of that. It's just weird. I don't know where movies go these days. I mean, there's a whole host of movies that are not even released in theaters, right? There's a lot of Netflix releases and Apple Plus releases and HBO Go releases and Amazon releases.
It used to be so simple back in the day. You got money to make a movie, you put it in theaters, and you saw if you made your money back. Now it's like, how does Netflix make its money? I guess subscriptions.
It's weird. I asked somebody the other day, I'm like, where's Chris Pratt been? I haven't seen him since the last Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a major movie star. And they go, oh, he's in an Apple Plus series. I had no idea. I have no idea where these actors are going. What
are you doing with there? Hanging out with apples.
So it's weird. It's definitely an odd. I don't know what the future of movies looks like, or if we're going to have big release kind of studios anymore. We're already seeing the decline of that a little bit.
When I see box office numbers, I'm curious about the budget. So when something releases on Netflix, how the heck am I supposed to know the budget of Adam Sandler's The Ridiculous Six? I'm probably not going to look it up, Nick.
It's weird. I think ultimately it's good for movies because more projects are being greenlit and there's more content out there than there has ever been. It sucks for consumers because the cost of all these subscriptions, if you want every service to see all of this content, is now more than cable, which is funny to me. We got kind of killed cable and then we brought back the same pricing model for all of these people.
Yep.
And so there is more content for the consumer right now, but it's just a very disjointed brand of content. So it's digital age, man. It's crazy.
Digital age. That's the age we're in. And that's the age that this Indiana Jones movie is in. So Nick, let's go ahead. We are going to use this episode as an opportunity to reflect and talk about the entire Indiana Jones franchise because it was our franchise of the year. For the Dial of Destiny, the plot talk, we will literally speed run it. We're going to give you just bullet points, just give you the key things you need to know. Nick's going to spill his guts for you. And then after we catch everybody up on that, we're going to give our opinions about this movie because I feel like it's very divisive, maybe more divisive than Crystal Skull. And I say that because I think Crystal Skull was more universally hated, and this one had audiences pretty split. So we're going to get into our opinions, our takeaways, why we think it got received the way it did. What do we think about this final journey for Indiana Jones, and talk about the whole series as a whole, because we dedicated this year to Indiana Jones. So we're going to give it its due diligence and talk about it. So Nick, let me go ahead and read this log line and then we'll jump into plot talk. Archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. Sounds pretty prototypical. I think it's time to just jump into plot talk, Nick. What do you say? Last time for Indiana Jones. Last time for the plot talk.
Plot talk.
The setup here, very simple. We're bringing the Nazis back. So we're back in time. We're doing some de-aging techniques on Harrison Ford, on Indiana Jones. We have the Nazis. We have this artifact. We don't know what it is, but this is going to be our central point of the movie. This is our dial of destiny. So that we're to this big escape sequence from the Nazis. Classic Indiana Jones, first 15 minutes of this movie, big escape scene. So we're already getting those Indy story beats. But we do find out about Indy. He's old here. He's divorced from Marion. Mutt, we're saying, where's Mutt, his son? Where's Shia LaBeouf? He's dead.
Super dead.
And the world has passed him by. He's no longer the great archaeologist, adventurer, Indiana Jones. Wife left him, son dead. Does not have a lot of motivation. We are going to meet Helena Shaw, and her nickname is going to be Wombat in this movie. But this is Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's going to be our new sidekick. She's the daughter of one of his old friends, Dr. Shaw. This is who's going to be toting around with us. We're going to have some cameos, right? We're going to have Sala. We saw him. He's in the trailer. If you watch the trailer, we know that they're going to be bringing everybody back for this big bang of a finale. But we know about this dial. We got a lot of shenanigans to get to this dial. A lot of chases, a lot of jumping on trains, a lot of riding horses through streets, right? A lot of that classic indie stuff all over the place.
Great cinema.
Yep, a lot of callbacks. He talks about drinking the blood of Ra. He talks about being played around with voodoo, Temple of Doom reference. We hear him talk about his father's watch. And with our indie flavor, with our indie story beats, we get to our dial of destiny, but the bad guys are going to get to us first.
Classic.
This dial of destiny can detect fissures in time, so they can go back in time. So this Nazi wants to get it, go back in time, help the Germans win the war. But we are going to actually go back in time, not to Nazi Germany, but instead at the end of this movie, we go back in time to the Romans, right?
The guy who created the siege of Syracuse,
which was talked about at the beginning of this movie, right? Very classic callbacks to what he says as a professor, to what happens in the movie. It's classic indie kind of stuff. We do meet the creator of the dial, Archimedes. And so there's this whole scene, right? He gets to meet a hero of his, Archimedes. There's this weird time paradox where Archimedes knew about planes and he had Indy's watch on when they find his corpse. So there's this whole time loop.
It was a Nazi's watch.
It was the Nazi's watch. You're right. Yes.
Picked it off the dead Nazi.
Yep, in the plane. So bad guys get the dial. We do kill the bad guys. We do go back into the future, the present as it is.
Back to the future.
Things get reconciled. Marion comes back. We do get Marion back in the movie. She makes her final cameo there. And we get a happily ever after, but Mutt is still dead. So how happy can it really be? But Sala's there, right? So the whole adventure crew is still around.
Grandpa Sala. So, yeah. Did we say that Marion and Indiana divorced? Did you say that?
They did. Yeah, I did. I think I did. If I didn't, they did divorce because of Mutt's death. It's this whole B plot going on underneath. But that's pretty much the notes of the movie. That's about as high level as we're going to get with this movie. So
I'd say low level, but because we streamlined through it. And that is the Dial of Destiny. We hit credits, directed by James Mangold. Thanks for listening.
If you've seen one indie movie, you've sort of seen them all. It's a different artifact they're trying to get. It's a different side character that's tagging along with them, but the beats are there. The chases are there. The high quality is there, especially in 2023 with that big budget we mentioned. High quality chases all the way around. So a lot of what you'd expect from an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, and we're not going to undersell this movie, oversell this movie. We're going to talk about it like we promised. So that is the plot, and now you're caught up. Nick, let's get straight into our talking points here, because I think this movie deserves a lot of them, being the conclusion of one of the most beloved cinematic characters to ever grace the screens. Do you have any questions about this movie? What was your gut reaction? If this is the last Indiana Jones movie, which it looks like it probably is, what do you think? Did it wrap up the franchise? Is it just another day life of Indiana Jones? Another job well done? Just brush off the leather jacket, hang up the hat, and maybe we'll do this again tomorrow. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. As far as wrapping up the franchise, it didn't feel like a proper wrap up to me. I wouldn't be surprised if they did stick one more Indiana Jones with Harrison Ford
No
out there.
way. They're not going to do that.
I could see them doing that as in an attempt to pass it off to a new Indiana Jones. They tried to do that with Shia.
I don't think they're not going to do that. They're not going to do that. Spielberg, Harrison Ford, they said no one could be Indiana Jones. He says, when I'm dead, so is Indiana Jones. They will not do that. Disney might want to for money.
If Spielberg passed it off to Mangold and said, we need a new flavor of Indy, if this was really the last one, wouldn't Spielberg take the time to wrap up his creation?
No, because he fucked up Crystal Skull.
Well, he did. But it sounds like he's passing it off to Mangold to say, hey, there's another iteration of Indiana Jones to be had for this new audience in the 2020s.
This is a whole topic itself. This is a whole topic itself. I think it's tough. Just like Crystal Skull and just like this movie, I feel like the audiences wanted more. I always want more. I think I said on the Crystal Skull episode, I would watch 1,000 Indiana Jones movies if it was just a giant TV series, but the episodes were 2-hour long movies. I would just be eating it up. So it's hard to wrap it up because you said it before. If you've seen one Indiana Jones, you kind of know what you're going to be getting yourself into. We have a introductory chase scene. Here's Indy and his real persona. His alter ego is a globetrotting archaeologist, and now he's a professor. Something gets brought up to him. He gets pulled into this whole grand adventure. We have an artifact to find. We have bad guys chasing you down. They always show up when you make a significant break in the case. And then there's a decision to be made at the end about the treasure or your well-being or whatever. So we know the recipe. We know the instructions when it comes to Indiana Jones. So it's hard to thematically wrap it up. That was an issue I had with this movie. It just, they were really building it up to be, this is the last ride. For me, I think it was just missing that sense of finality because it just seemed like it could have been another adventure of Indiana Jones. Yeah, that's just, I don't think it wrapped up satisfactory for me.
Let me take this back to the first
Raiders.
Right, let's go all the way back to Raiders. And we talked about the inception of Indiana Jones. And we talked about Spielberg in his conversations about how this was a serial. What is a staple of a serial? You enter it halfway through, you see the adventure, and it ends in the same place that it started. It's almost like a sitcom, right? Or a TV series where the ending of it is going to be the same as when you started it. You go through the conflict, the adventure, and then the end is our hero is still there, ready for the next adventure. So it almost violates the principle of the serial to add some sort of finality to it. How many TV shows have we seen where we love the TV show and they could never stick the landing? It's hard to stick the landing on something that is meant to be consistent. And the whole concept of the serial is consistency. And so I don't know if you ever can give it finality. Hell, we're used to Hollywood giving us quote unquote finality, Tony Stark's death. And all of a sudden he's going to come back as Dr. Doom because it's Hollywood. And when you have a winning formula, you can never accept finality.
I don't think it's possible to wrap up an Indiana Jones story because he's literally going to be pulled into adventures and finding artifacts, making tough decisions at the end of the 2 hours. And then that's it. Then it's another artifact on the shelf in his storage. And it's a story, it's a memory, and we move on to the next. So
unless he definitively dies, like, I don't know how you can finish it.
So for me, I brought up the video game Uncharted on this podcast a couple times. So that's a video game franchise that has 4 games. 1, 2, and 3 are pretty much all the same. 4, there's a big sense of finality to it. And when you finish that game, it's like when you finish a big franchise, like Harry Potter fans, when they're done with all the Harry Potter books or the Harry Potter movies, you're happy that it has a great final resting place, but you're kind of depressed that it's over. Same phenomenon when I finished the Uncharted series. It was like, wow, what a great series. What a perfect ending. I'm happy for the character. I am sad for me that it's over. For this movie, I didn't get that sense of overwhelming dopamine or emotions or the tinglies through my body. I didn't feel like, wow, like what a send off. It just felt like it was another notch in the whip.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think there was a part of them. There was a part at the end of the movie when they went back in time where Indy wanted to stay back in Rome with
Well, let's talk
Archimedes
about that. Yeah.
and die there. And they tried to give it that finality, but then, Helena knocks him out and drags him back to the present. Which I thought that may have given. I thought it would have been a kind of a cop out, but it would have given some finality to that. But I want to ask you about the premise of the movie. So, or the first Indy, right? Artifact base, Ark of the Covenant. The second Indy, Temple of Doom. We didn't love it because it didn't quite have that same artifact flavor. We were in a cave.
It didn't follow.
Weird.
It didn't follow the formula.
We weren't Spielberg divorces, Lucas divorces.
It was the divorce movie. This is famously the divorce movie of the podcast.
Yes, absolutely.
Don't go through a divorce and make a movie at the same time is what we're saying.
Can't do it. Last Crusade, I think hands down our favorite of the Indy franchise.
The best of the
series. It had that flavor again. And then they wait all this time and they come up with Crystal Skull, which we liked as a movie and we didn't like the premise.
Entertaining, right? Tough sell on the shtick. Didn't stick the landing and didn't shtick the shtick.
So tell me what you thought of this time travel-y shtick.
Yes. Okay. This actually transitions nicely from what we were just talking about the finality. You mentioned it. Harrison Ford, Indiana Jones, wants to make the choice of staying with Archimedes in the past because it seems like he has nothing going for him. Mutt is super dead. Marion hates his guts because Mutt is dead, and apparently that is Indiana Jones's fault. It seems like this could have had finality to the character if he stayed in the past, but I don't think I would really like that as a choice. And speaking of choice, Indiana Jones didn't really have a choice because Helena just punched him and forced him back into the present. So I felt like it was the story of Dial of Destiny is not very clear and I don't understand it. And I really wish there was more, not balance, but I wish there was a more convincing story because we loved The Last Crusade because it did a great job of balancing the outrageous, fictional, globe-trotting, treasure hunting, action spectacle that Indiana Jones is known for, but it had a very subtle Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 story with his relationship with his father. It was perfect. This movie, I felt like they tried to shoehorn in the Marion divorce story, Mutt is dead story, the grief story. He's got nothing going for him. Helena makes the decision for him, and then Marion and Indiana Jones make up in the end. It just, I don't know, it didn't really land, didn't stick the landing for me. It felt like it was just trying to have a story in it, but it didn't work. But going back to the time travel thing. So let me ask you this. If Crystal Skull didn't come out, would this be more jarring? Because for me, it was a little bit more palatable because we already got aliens. I'm sorry. I mean, interdimensional beings. So yeah, 2008 Crystal Skull really jumped the shark in a science fiction way. And time travel is a little bit more science fiction adjacent. I mean, don't get us wrong. Like Raiders, Temple of Doom, Last Crusade, they're all dealing with magic and fantastical things that are literally unbelievable. Ghosts coming out of a box and melting Nazis, possession and puppet stabbing and just human sacrifice. in Temple of Doom, Possession, Last Crusade, Walking on Air, Immortality. A knight from the Middle Ages is literally alive in this cave. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of crazy things that are just out of the realm of possibilities. So these aren't different in that regard. I think aesthetically, they are different with aliens and time travel. I think that really irks a lot of people, and people say, don't cross pollinate science fiction with Indiana Jones. But it kind of has always been fantastical and full of fantasy. So what do you think? If Crystal Skull didn't come out, would it be like, what the hell? Or is it like,
Yes.
they had aliens,
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think you're 100% correct. Where if this was the next iteration of Indy, if this is the one that came out years after Last Crusade, it would have been a lot more jarring. I think what you brought up there is really important because that's what I was thinking about during this movie. And I was thinking about it during Crystal Skull as well. The first three movies were fantastical, obviously, and supernatural, all that stuff. But it was things that the audience were aware of, right? The Ark of the Covenant is a known thing, especially in the 80s. World was a little more religious. You know what the Ark of the Covenant is, right? It's where Moses carried the 10 Commandments. You know the Last Supper. You know the chalice that Jesus drank out of in the Last Supper. That's a known thing. Voodoo, known thing. Alien skulls and Archimedes' dial to make time travel, not known commodities. Hard things to sell the audience on, right? We don't think that that's supernatural.
Let me say this about the dial. What is it called? The Arca...
Akathykos or something. They mention it.
Hold on.
I'm sure it has a basis in reality. And
no, it
just
does.
like
it's an actual artifact. Antikythera. No, Antikythera. It's a real thing. It was made by Archimedes. I would say edge to dial because at least it is real. Because as we learned in Crystal Skull, there was just this French guy who was selling basically resins, fake crystal skulls to museums and pawning them off as ancient Aztec artifacts when he literally just conned museums. So Crystal Skull has a whole other problem with it not even being based on authentic relics. This one has something going for it.
It does, but the general public doesn't connect to it, right? There's no.
I think when you get 5 movies in, you're running out of popular artifacts. Relics.
I'm not saying that, but if you went with like Egyptian mummies, maybe, right? That's a little more.
Well, then that would just be The Mummy with Brendan Fraser.
Well, I mean, there should have been a crossover, is all I'm saying. But
absolutely.
But you're dealing with artifacts that people don't know. But let me say this about Dial of Destiny when it comes to what you were saying. You didn't quite understand what the dial was doing in the time travel. This movie, similar to Crystal Skull and even similar to Temple, the reason that The Last Crusade was so good and the reason that Raiders was so good, and we talked about this at the time, was because of the mystery solving aspect where we got to find out about this artifact and the powers of it throughout the mystery solving aspect, right? We're going through these things. We're looking for this tablet that's going to tell us something new. We're looking for this new location in this tomb. And this movie didn't have a lot of that. We did maybe 2 things where we had to solve a mystery to find the next location. And that's half the fun of Indiana Jones, right? He's an archaeologist. He knows about these things. Oh, this person died at this time, so we have to look for this. And Indy didn't even really do it. It was really Helena who did a lot of the figuring of things out. And Indy felt like a passive observer. He was a passenger a lot in this story. Helped out a couple of times, but we didn't really get that mystery solving. And like National Treasure, right, does a good job of this, right? Explaining the mystery as you're going so that the final reveal holds a lot more weight, right? Because you're kind of growing the suspense of this artifact throughout the course of the movie. And the whole time we're just hearing about this dial is powerful. This dial is crazy. This dial might detect fissures in time. And then finally you're in a plane and you go through time and you end up in the Roman Empire. I was like, I don't understand what this dial does at all. And I don't know how people know what this dial does.
I feel like we still had beats that where, we had to go to Indiana Jones in New York, and then we had the whole parade chase, and they ran past the astronauts that just landed on the moon. And then we had to go to Morocco and get the one half of the dial there. And then we had to go to the middle of the ocean and get the gravitas, whatever it was called, the tablet. So I felt like there was still like, there's steps and there's stages to hit. I hear what you're saying about not really learning about significant clues along the way. It was really just, we have this half, we need this half, and then we need this map. But it didn't bother me too much. But just to wrap up the time travel thing, how did you feel about how we went back in time? Was it like,
hated it?
What the hell? Okay. So for me, like I said, Crystal Skull came and went, aliens entered the chat. So I was like, all right, we're going back in time. So I honestly, I didn't really mind it. I thought it was actually pretty entertaining when the planes go through the rift in the sky, pop out in the siege of Syracuse. I thought it was sick. And then, they got like references to, oh, they have dragons. It's like, okay, that's where like the Legends of Dragons came in. Indiana Jones always has his stamp on history. He charged past the astronauts in the parade. He's foiled the Nazis plenty of times. Dragons are only a thing because Indiana Jones was there. So for me, it wasn't actually like too much of a crazy moment just because of where we went in Crystal Skull. I just think it would have been better if we didn't just jump back in time with so little time left in the movie. I think if you're going to do that, I'd say like go with at least half of the movie left, because then it's like, okay, this is the climax. And now we can at least play this out. Like, what would Indiana Jones do in these ancient times? I just felt like it was a little bit rushed and a little bit, it seems too out of place because of just how fast it happened. And then all of a sudden decisions made for him and we're back in New York and Marion forgives him for their super dead son. So I think that was just the main gripe for me for the time travel.
I think the last thing I'll say about this is, and this is just me being nitpicky.
Nitpicks.
The classic Indy beat really is we're going after this artifact. We get to see a glimpse of its power. The bad guy gets a glimpse of the power, and that glimpse of power is too much, and it usually defeats the bad guy. And then Indy goes, it's too much, and we need to put it in a museum. Right? That almost keeps the mystery alive, right? The Ark of the Covenant was barely opened and it killed everybody. We never really figured out the magic behind it. The Holy Grail, right? Everyone died going for the Holy Grail and they had to let it go. We didn't really get to see the effects of it. Even Crystal Skull, right? Learning all the knowledge melted a guy in broad daylight.
We never saw the repercussions of the dial. Because it's a thing we say about, show, don't tell. And Helena is the one that tells the audience, you might change the course of history, and that could be drastically bad. So it's told to us the repercussions, but we don't actually see it. So I get what you're saying.
Right. Yeah. There's a part where she says he has to create the new dial so that we have this dial. That could have been expanded on more, right? That would have been cool to say,
too rushed.
We have to
too rushed at the end. Too much.
You're right.
Too much at the end.
We had 10 minutes back in Rome with Archimedes, which could have been a more profound moment, right? Like you're saying, it could have been a much more profound moment, but instead we have
relished in that moment.
And that could have really helped to the finality of the series. If Harrison Ford, if Indiana Jones finally got to understand history through the eyes of someone who was there, and understood that his role in history has to be an observer. Or
he helped make the Antikythera. That'd be pretty sick. Like it was his destiny.
Yes.
He was part of the relic making. That would have been sick. I should write this movie.
there's a lot of ways that it could have gone, and you're very right. Like I was watching when I went through the movie. It's 2.5 hours. We get
Long.
to Rome at an hour 53, and then we have 30 minutes to wrap it up, and it's a very rushed wrap up. The payoff just wasn't there, so we didn't get to know a lot about the dial. We get to go back in time, which we could have learned about the dial there, but we had to wrap it up. And so everything it was a lot of adventure chase, which is entertaining. Don't get me wrong. There were very good chase scenes, very good adventure scenes, but the substance of the movie got crammed and not explained. And it didn't pace well, I guess I'd say, towards the end of the movie. So that's where I'm at with it. That's all I'll say about the time travel thing. It's such a hard thing to tackle anyway. There's so many movies who have tried to tackle the time paradox and everything, and we didn't need Indy. We watched
a movie this year that dealt with time travel, Minutemen, the Disney Channel original movie. Who did it better, Dial of Destiny or Minutemen?
I honestly thought he might go back and was going to be able to save Mutt's life because he talked about that a lot.
Where'd you think they were going to go? Because they said that the continental drift put off the calibrations for the fissures in time. So he said, we're not going back to Poland 1939. Where do you think we're going? Where did you think they were going?
I thought they were going to go to Germany, but a few years later where Indy was going to be able to save Mutt's life. And maybe he would die in the process.
Well, I think he died in Vietnam.
Oh, you're right, because that was with the moon landing.
Not World War II. Just got murdered
where
in
am
Germany.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Wow, my timeline's
You're supposed
off.
to be in Vietnam. What are we doing?
I was so Nazi focused. But yeah, I thought they would get back to a place where he would be able to save Mutt and then he would be able to save Mutt, keep Marion happy, and then he would die knowing he did the right thing. And that would have added finality to it.
You know where I was scared it was going to go? I thought we were going to get a cheese fest, cheesy ass victory lap tour of all of Indiana Jones's movies. I thought we were going to go back to Peru in 1935. I thought we were going to go to Shanghai or wherever in 1934, 35. I thought we were going to go to Petra, Jordan, or whatever the name of the city was. And I thought we were going to get like a cheesy ass montage of here's the highlight.
All of the lucky things that happened to Indy was actually past Indy helping him out throughout all these adventures or something.
Yeah, I didn't know where we were going. And then when we entered the Roman times, I was like, oh shit, here we go. And there's a random ass pilot that so there's a character named Teddy that is like short round of the new generation. He is Helena's sidekick and best little buddy. He has a goal of flying planes, and he flies a separate plane into the rift. And there's this random pilot that owns the plane, wakes up. He wakes up in ancient Rome. And I was like, what the hell is this guy thinking is going on right now? He doesn't speak the language that Teddy speaks. He is like, this kid stole my plane. There's ancient boats and catapults and spears. What the hell?
One guy gets speared. One pilot gets speared through the chest, which is my nomination for best weapon. Because if you're a Roman and you took down a 1960s fighter plane,
good on you, man.
That's intense. You thought that was a dragon and you hit it straight in what you thought were its eyeballs. It ended up murdering a Nazi through the chest with the spear. Good. Hell yeah.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Speaking of, I thought it was funny. So this movie takes place in 1969, and Mads Mikkelsen's character, he is a former Nazi trying to revive that Nazi brand. And did they find a Nazi plane and dress up in Nazi uniforms as cosplay to go back in time to 1939 Poland?
Well, they did, because when they landed, they thought they were going in and they wanted to land in like friendly German
like where'd
airspace.
they find that Nazi plane 20 years later, 30 years later?
That's a great question.
They was just waiting for that moment.
Question? Can I ask you a question that's unrelated to your question? At the beginning chase scene, when Dr. Voller, Mads Mikkelsen's character, basically wears a steel beam to the face
Oh,
while hanging off of a train, I thought this guy's face should be way more messed up, or this guy is dead. How he survived that encounter, I needed to hear about that.
my wife had the same complaint. She said, that guy's dead. There's no way he's coming back. And then he shows up in the present day, and Emily says, oh, come on. He just got concussed with a steel beam going 90 miles an hour. Ain't no way. Speaking of that, speaking of going back in time, I want to talk about the intro. It is incredible. The de-aging is incredible. It's
really good.
Unreal. It is unreal. I don't want that to go undersold, underappreciated.
No.
It's fantastic. So when James Mangold said, if I had Steven Spielberg's job, if I had a young Harrison Ford, how would I do the introductory chase scene? This is how he does it. Best part of the movie by far is the intro. I thought it was crazy good. And we all know Indiana Jones is at his best when he's fighting the Nazis. That's where all the best movies are.
They knew where their bread and butter was. So the CGI, the chase scenes, the adventuring scenes were all top tier. I have zero. The premise I can have an issue with. The money they put into the action sequences is fantastic. It all paid off.
Mm-hmm.
The $294 million budget, what was well spent on what they were trying to do. And you're right, the de-aging, the action sequences, and we're not just talking de-aging, you see young Harrison Ford in a small shot. We're talking a full scene of him fighting on top of a train.
It's a huge 15, 20-minute sequence.
It's big time. It's big time. So I have zero issues with the visuals of this movie. It is fantastic.
Yeah, I think you can tell a little bit. Maybe the editor late at night got a little bit lazy with the eye tracking or the facial tracking, but I think for the most part, it's hard to tell that it's a deep fake. You can tell it's a deep fake, but
I just want that it's Harrison Ford. So you
literally have the information and know it is, but it's fact. But I just gotta say, I thought the intro was really strong, really strong. I appreciate it.
It's a classic Indy intro. The long chase scene, the
introduction
to the artifact. Like I said, this had all the Indy story beats going for it, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
But let's talk about another actor and the absence of him, because I had this question. So we know that Mutt died. So what happened? What happened with Shia? Because when I first saw Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I was convinced that they were tagging Shia LaBeouf. And then at that time, right, he's one of the hotter actors in Hollywood, right? We're Transformers, Crystal Skull. And I was convinced they're grooming him to be the next Indiana Jones. And suddenly that's not the case. And we're 15 years after Crystal Skull here. So if it was going to be Shia, we would have seen a movie come out 2015, 26, 7 years at the latest. So do you have any info on that? Because I couldn't find anything.
One, I think it's just his off-screen antics because he just had a crazy spell.
Just do it!
Just do it, being a dirtbag human being, just saying nasty stuff, treating his girlfriend horribly, alcohol abuse. The works, unfortunately. Seems like he's in a better place now.
Reformed. Yeah, so
seems like he's in a better place now. However, I think his Hollywood era really jaded him as far as his enthusiasm and politeness as a person, because when asked about his major Hollywood films, he would scoff at them and say, it sucks to have your face in these movies and people hate it. They see Crystal Skull and they hate it. They see Revenge of the Fallen and they hate it. They see your face, and he's a very artistic guy, so he doesn't quite necessarily agree with corporate Hollywood and blockbusters. That's not his jam. He's a little bit more niche and artistic and whatever. But when asked about Spielberg, he actually had some not so nice things to say back in the day. This is like 2016, 2015. He said, when you made it to a Spielberg movie, you think, wow, this is the dream. But then when you meet Spielberg, it's not the Spielberg you dreamed of. He's less of a director and more of a company. So bridge burned there. A little bit, a little bit too poetically harsh. But at the same time, I do see where he's coming from, because if you're coming in with your own method and your own philosophy on acting, and then Spielberg is like, dude, I made Duel, I made Jurassic Park, I made Schindler's List, and he's not bragging about it, but the Spielberg set is going to be run like a Spielberg set, where it's like, this is my vision, deliver your line, 30 seconds in, hit your beat, and let's move on. Because Spielberg has, I see both sides. Spielberg has proven that he's an amazing director. And on the other side of things, it is a team sport. It shouldn't just be like one guy's vision. It is everybody coming together. And then if you're lucky, you make something beautiful and perfect and unique. So I see both sides. So 1, bridge burned. 2, off-screen antics. 3, like you said, 15 years later, it was just time to move on. For me, this was an issue because it adds to what I mentioned earlier of the shoehorning in the story, forcing in some story of, Indiana Jones is going through grief because Marion is separated from him and Mutt is dead. And that's a plot point now. I want to transition this into my question of what was missing. I have an answer. It's related to Shia. It's related to Marion. But what do you think was missing from this movie, and why we felt like it didn't feel like the best send-off for Indiana Jones? What could have made it better?
So for me, what was missing, you mentioned it a little bit there. There was a lack of emotional attachment for Indy. And it's what I mentioned before, which is the investigative nature of Indy. This really just felt like, let's send old Indy out on an adventure. There weren't quite the booby traps. They did have a booby trap. They got into a room that may have been poison gassed because Helena couldn't breathe, but Indy was fine.
Methane.
That was weird. Yeah, that one was weird. So we didn't have the booby traps. We didn't have the danger. I didn't have the emotional investment in this version of Indy as I have in previous Indies, where he's with his father, or he's getting double crossed by an old friend, or all of those things. So it felt a little phoned in, if I had to be very honest about it.
So you hit all the major surface checkpoints of booby traps and doohickeys and whatnots and figuring out clues. The last thing you said there, the emotional attachment, that's what's missing here. So I think this movie is actually missing its own Temple of Doom, because we had the original trilogy, Raiders, awesome introduction, Temple of Doom, Dark Downfall, Last Crusade, triumphant return of the series. This movie needed another movie before it. We needed a 2015 Indiana Jones, because we went from 2008. Indiana Jones has a son. It's Shia LaBeouf. He's hot right now. Happily Ever After, we marry Marion. Shia might be the new Indiana Jones, but Harrison Ford does a little
hat
plucky,
grab
not so fast, Junior. And then we jump straight into Dial, where it's like Mutt's dead, Marion separate. It's like, what the hell just happened? The thing we're missing in this movie is not in this movie. It's a whole other movie. I think we needed that second dark movie that would have set up all of this grief and turmoil, because I think that emotional payoff would have actually been there in this movie if we had all of that depressing storyline to go through in a different movie. If we saw the downfall of Indiana Jones, but we knew there was going to be a triumphant return. So for me, it was like,
right.
Yeah, we're separated from Marion, Mutt's dead, but I think we needed to go through that, because you can say all that. Who cares? You can say all that in the beginning, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're happy again at the end. It was missing. It needed its own Temple of Doom, unfortunately. So you needed a bullet to bite so that you can have
That's really interesting. We needed a Temple of Doom. No one's ever said that.
This is the only time we'll say it. Dial of Destiny needed its own Temple of Doom.
That's a really good point, because if we got to see Shia LaBeouf in another movie where they were because we got introduced to him, right? There's the introduction, and then there was no way for the audience to make him a beloved staple in Indiana Jones,
It's
right?
such
He felt like a sidekick, and we're used to sidekicks. Yeah, we're used to sidekicks getting removed in the next movie, right?
Coming and going.
Yeah, we had Marion, then we didn't have Marion in Temple.
We had Short
and
Round.
Then we had Last Crusade when it's his dad. So we're used to replacing sidekicks. So Mutt felt like a replaceable sidekick.
Yeah, and Crystal Skull felt like it was a happy ending, and this is how it's going to be. And then it's so jarring to come into Dial, because it's like, hey, remember the happy ending in Crystal? It's gone. It's just like, oh, okay, sir, yes, sir.
Was Mangold going through a divorce? We checked. We looked into this.
Mangold's not going through. No, because Shia was crazy out of pocket, and I think they just too much time passed where they're like, we got to make a story. This is it.
Yeah, we're really running short on Harrison Ford's time as an actor.
Yeah.
Well, James, I have a question for you. Were there any noticeable differences not having Spielberg in the chair? It's just switching from the person who had this vision to begin with, passing it off to a new leader. Did you notice anything different in this movie?
Quality. I felt like it was just an updated, refined version of Indiana Jones. All the same story beats were there. All the same camera tricks and use of lighting and shadows, very Spielberg-esque, I'd say. So I think James Mangold did an appropriate job for being the next guy in the chair. I think not having Spielberg in the chair is a good thing, because I think he just, for the 80s and 90s, I felt like audiences are just a little bit more gullible and feed into the cheese. And Crystal Skull kind of played into that same campy one-liners and here we go. And I don't know, Dial felt like it was a little bit more updated, still had that audience appealing laughs and campiness to it, but I felt like it wasn't super cheesy. So I think it was an appropriate handoff. I actually didn't think it was a bad thing at all. I think James Mangold did a really good job of emulating all the Spielberg-esque qualities of what makes Indiana Jones great, while also inserting some updated quality to the movie.
At the top of this podcast, I said seeing James Mangold in the chair was a red flag, and you pushed back on me. And as we've talked about this movie, I've realized that all my issues with it are in the writing and the premise. The directorial job on this was really well done. It's entertaining to the eye. So James Mangold, I'm sorry for what I said at the top of the hour about seeing your name was a red flag. It was not. You did a wonderful job directing this movie.
I think you still co-wrote it, so you can still have some stake in your argument. There was two main writers, the Buttersworth brothers, but James Mangold did Buttersworth brothers, but he did have some stake in the game.
Yeah. So, but there were also things out of his control, right? Like you can't get Shia LaBeouf, so you have to find a way to write him out of the story. They sort of set themselves up into a bad place with Crystal Skull. They took a gamble on Shia LaBeouf maybe being the next Indy, and that gamble didn't pay off. And now you have to write him out of it, and that's a tough place to be.
It's a huge pitfall for a franchise like this, because like I said earlier, Marvel, it started in 2008, MCU, and then we peak in 2019. We're still going, but we all know it was, Endgame is where it's at. And you had a whole concise decade to flesh out stories and plan out storylines. This one is spanning 40 years. So it's tough. Yeah. When you keep adding layers to it, you're kind of narrowing the route you can take, when you get to the quote unquote end, which makes it seem like there's no such thing as finality with Indiana Jones, where you should have left it broad. I think the happy ending aspect of Crystal Skull really was an Achilles heel for Dial of Destiny. 15 years later, you just decide to wipe all of that and say, nope, never mind. Here's what's happening, but we're still going to wrap it up with a bow.
Let's stick with the same creative mind. Let's go to Lucas, right? And where they put their chips for Star Wars Episode 7 to continue the Skywalker saga. And they put their chips into that basket for 7, 8, 9. And after 7, they pigeonholed themselves into that Rey Skywalker
if
saga.
I will. Porg hold. Porgs, yeah. Nick. They're the birds in The Last Jedi.
So they did the same thing there, and it's really hard when you're taking a property that it has so much love and adoration for it.
And history.
And fandom. And just pure fandom behind it, right? Like you take, and I don't know if we quite do this anymore. I mean, I'm getting a little philosophical here, but with modern day movies, we're not really great at creating franchise and staple characters. A lot of our staple characters are still from the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, even comic book characters, right? So it's when you have a character, John Wick's a great, okay, John Wick's a good one. That's a really great poll right there.
It's the best.
And that was a great example of creating a staple character in number 1 and carrying it to 4 and giving it finality. And that's good. I'm not sure if modern audiences, I mean, I'm trying to think. John Wick, yes, but do we have an Indiana Jones or a, dare I say, Snake Plissken, or dare I say, I know it's a bad example, but these Luke Skywalker, a revered character that spans.
I think it's
beyond.
Old heads. I think it's old heads in Hollywood front offices, you can call it. They're just banking on nostalgia and memories, and they say this name's going to get you money. Disney said Indiana Jones is a franchise. It's a face. Granted, Spielberg, Lucas, Harrison Ford did want to make the 5th one, but I think it's just a little bit of a, we got to move on, make new iconic characters. I'd go back to Breaking Bad and Vince Gilligan. The creator of Breaking Bad, Vince Gilligan, season 5 is the final season. Audiences are craving for more. They say, give us more Breaking Bad. And Vince Gilligan says, if I give you more, you're just going to hate it. And I can't do that to you. Can't do that to my characters. Can't do that to Walter White. Can't do that to Jesse Pinkman. Can't do it to anybody. So you have to know when to leave. Disney, movies, Hollywood, they kind of don't really know when to leave the party, which I think is a major crutch in the operation. We still want more. I've said it. I will watch 100 Indiana Jones movies. So if I'm asking for more and I get more and then I'm disappointed, that's on me. So evolution.
It's a fair point. It's
the same thing. It's the same thing over and over again that we keep asking for. They just keep getting better cameras and CGI and stunts, honestly.
Did the Indy series benefit from having this modern day reboot? Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny. And I'm with you 110%. I'd watch 1,000 Indiana Jones movies. But did we need these reboots? Did they add anything to the franchise or the character of Indiana Jones? Or if we left it at number 3, like you were saying, would we be, is it okay for audiences to want more and just leave those 3 as a great trilogy minus Temple of Doom?
Like you said, we wanted it, hence not needed. Yeah, Crystal Skull, Dial of Destiny, didn't need it. If you left it at Last Crusade, that would have been a perfect ending. However, if you gave me the option of getting 2 more movies, I'd say give me 2 more movies. So you tell me, is it necessary or not?
Oh gosh, it's so weird because in a weird way, I know we've been talking down a little bit on Dial of Destiny, but I would watch all 5 of these movies again and again and again because the premise is fun and the action is fun and the character is amazing.
Great.
And I'm not sure how many other franchises I could say that about. Fast and Furious might hit that that point for me where it's weird, right? Because there's only like 2 or 3 really good ones in the series of 9 where you'd say like, oh yeah, that was a good one.
They're at 10.
But
they're going on 11.
Fair, Fast X. Yeah, you're right.
12 if you count the spinoff.
Hobbs and Shaw. You're damn right.
Ridiculous, awful. Don't watch it.
But there's an entertainment factor to the franchise where,
like, I will keep coming back. I will keep showing up to the ticket booth and buying an admission ticket to this movie.
Yeah, like I know Crystal Skull wasn't our favorite, but I'll go back and watch that. It was very entertaining to me. We usually ask this at the top of the pod, and we didn't this time, but this was my first watch for Dial of Destiny.
Same.
I don't know how you. Yeah, I'll rewatch it. I will.
Yeah.
I love Harrison Ford as an actor. I always will. There's just nothing to sway me from that opinion. And the premise of Indiana Jones is so great to me, but it's so interesting from what I said that really only 2 of the Indiana Jones movies will knock your socks off for selling you on this character. So I don't know. I don't know the answer to my question about if the next 2 were necessary. Not necessary, but I'll keep watching them. If they do another one after this one, if they do Indiana Jones and the Mummy of Giza, I'll watch it. No question. 0 questions asked. I won't say what's the premise, who's in it. I'll say I'm there. I'm there opening night every day of the week.
If they do Indiana Jones and the DeLorean of Twin Pines Mall, I'm there. 100%. I am there. I'm in.
100% into it.
Yeah.
So let's do what you were talking about. Let's rank these. Let's talk about it. Let's rank these
clear winner
movies.
Let's do something fun here. So let's start at number 5 and we'll work our way up to number 1. Give me your number 5th rated last place movie. 55 seconds. Last place. 3, 2, 1.
Temple of Destiny.
What?
Yeah.
Real? No, Nick. The worst?
Mm-hmm.
Why?
Yeah. It was missing a lot. I would compare this Dial of Destiny to an Impossible Burger. It had the flavors of a burger, but I was left, my stomach was saying we did not eat a burger. We just didn't have the substance to it.
But what if it was, what's the other brand that's not good? Beyond. What if it was Beyond Burger? To me, Crystal Skull is a Beyond Burger and Impossible Burger is Dial of Destiny. It's like, at least I'm getting the flavors of it. Even though I know it's like not the best, at least I'm being fooled into that it's the best. I think Crystal and Temple's like a turkey burger. That's like a bullshit ass, like, you're real meat, but you're not even trying to fool me that this is beef.
That's fair. Well, let's talk about number 4. Let's say number 4 and then we'll talk about this.
Well, so now I'm all messed up because okay.
Now you're number all 4. Screwed up. Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
Temple.
Crystal Skull.
Really?
Well, I mean, I said Temple at 5 because Temple for me is the worst one because it's so different from the rest of the franchise in not a good way. We discussed it. We discussed it in Crystal Skull. We obviously discussed it in Temple of Doom. We've discussed it in The Last Crusade. It's too underground. It's too dark. We're not figuring out clues. We're not globetrotting. It's just a lot of just melancholy drama bullshit. Possession, voodoo, Willie Scott running around, damsel in distress, the most annoying character of the entire franchise. It is. That one's the worst. So Crystal Skull for me is number 4 because it was the initial departure of the supernatural and kind of going into science fiction. The Shia LaBeouf in retrospect is tough to swallow just because you know how he turned out and how he views the movie. Yeah. I think just the rehash of it, Dial of Destiny seemed a little bit more refined and distinguished, I'd say. Crystal Skull just seemed like this is the super B movie of the franchise. It is complete camp, complete cheese. This is where Spielberg should have stepped down and said, hey, new director, you should take this on. Temple will always be standout for not being good and being too different, and Crystal Skull is just above it because at least it follows the typical Indiana Jones formula, but it's not a good movie in its aesthetic and themes.
For me, Temple and Dial were pretty interchangeable as far as they didn't have that mysterious aspect. They were very linear. The only thing that Temple gave me that Dial did not was more so of the booby traps. We got to understand the concept of what we were dealing with a little more, which is why Temple got a little bit of a leg up on Dial for me. But they I think they did fall into the same pitfalls as each other, which was it's a very linear storyline. The audience always knows what's coming next. We're kind of in the same place. I know Dial we're traveling, but we're always after the same thing. There's no deviation or mystery around it. So for me, Dial and Temple were pretty interchangeable at 4 or 5. I just gave Dial the 5. Call it recency bias.
Let's give her number 3s in 3, 2, 1.
Kingdom
Dial
of,
of Destiny.
Skull.
Okay. So Dial of Destiny to me is the most mid in a good way and a bad way, because I think the quality's there, the filmmaking's there. It just didn't stick the landing. It had the tough job of sticking the landing because apparently it's the final entry in the Harrison Ford Indiana Jones series. So it has a tall order to fill. It's better than Temple of Doom. It's better than Crystal Skull. It's not better than Raiders. It's not better than Last Crusade. So it is right in the middle of the pack for me, for all reasons we discussed, the rejoices and the downfalls.
So the bottom 3, everyone in the audience could have guessed what the bottom 3 were. The order of it, we can debate. I liked Crystal Skull. Obviously, we hated the premise, but we did like the action and adventure part of it. I think it had a lot more of the figuring things out, solving the mysteries. I thought it did a really good job of rebooting the franchise after number 3, right? As the 4th installment. I thought it did a really good job. Again, it sucks that Shia didn't work out for that, but in and of itself, in a vacuum, I thought it was the most Indy adjacent as far as the adventure, figuring things out, globetrotting, mystery, adventure sort of concept. So I gave Crystal Skull the number 3 spot for that one, but I do think 3 through 5 could be fairly interchangeable. Like, I don't disagree with what you're saying. We just have different views on what makes an indie movie that ranking, but
yeah. And
I do think we're going to be simpatico on 1 and 2. So
yeah. So you say, Mutt's a good side character. I felt the same about Helena. I thought she was a great side character. Very 2023 decision. Shia was hot back then. Phoebe Waller-Bridger's hot right now. It's the perfect decision. I think the Crystal Skull was a little bit, I think everybody was just cheesing on that one. I think Spielberg was just, how great is it that we're all back here together? Harrison Ford, George Lucas, me. People love reboots in 2008.
We got Shia LaBeouf.
Shia LaBeouf, he's hot from Transformers. I think it's just like, it was too much like, people are going to love this. Whereas Dial was like, let's go out with a distinguished bang, kind of land mix with the audiences. But like you said, Nick, we all know the top 2 are going to be the top 2. And we're going to give our number 2 selection. Number 2, Nick, in 3, 2, 1. Raiders of the Lost Ark. Thank you. People might say Raiders is the best of the bunch. We respectfully disagree, although we do acknowledge this is a very, very impressive movie. Put the franchise on the map. It is impeccable. I think it's entered into the archives of cultural significance, whatever. It's a great movie, self-explanatory, all spectacle, no story. It embodies what George Lucas and Steven Spielberg originally set out to make it, which is an homage to those 1950s serials that they grew up watching in the Saturday matinee theater watches in their youth. And it does a perfect job of celebrating those.
I don't think I've ever seen a better introduction to a character, especially considering there's no background story involved in it. And this is nothing against Raiders. It's just honestly how good The Last Crusade was. It's a top tier film, just through and through. Raiders is a very close second. Like it's not like there's a clear 1 and 2 ranking.
It's not a huge dichotomy.
If someone told me Raiders is the best indie movie, I wouldn't argue with them. I'd say that's a great opinion. Yeah. So, but I would say it's the best introduction to a character.
Arguing somebody about Glass in the box office,
Don't do that, or do it, because now you have the information. Oh God! No, it's the best intro into development of a character. I don't think I have a good example of anything that compares, because everyone else has a origin story. To bring someone in without an origin story and explain their character and bring you into the adventure from Jump Street, from the first time we see him, I mean the Boulder escape scene, to bring somebody into a franchise with that being your first introduction to it is, I mean, it's just so impressive. I mean, it's a great movie. It's a wonderful movie. Gosh. So
hard to top. Hard to
top, but there is a top.
It does get topped. It does get topped because the number one, Nick, 3, 2, 1, The Last Crusade is the best of the franchise because it is all the best parts of Raiders of the Lost Ark with some structured added story that gives it more emotional payoff at the end. It is awesome. The best of the bunch.
I know Sean Connery is a controversial character in Hollywood. I know he's said some things that are untoward.
Slapping
women, the whole thing, but you cannot discount the quality of Sean Connery in that movie. The emotional investment of Indiana Jones with his father, the storyline, and it's top tier. The action's great. The premise is great. The mystery is great. The casting is great.
As of right now, it sits as number 3 of all the movies we've seen.
Yeah, and I think it deserves every bit of that. It's just that darn good.
Okay, well, Last Crusade, Nick, is taking home the hardware for the best of the bunch, but we got to get into some mini hardware over here. It is time for mini pops. Yes, it's our awards section. And we didn't forget about Dial of Destiny. I know we talked about the whole franchise, but we are zeroing back in on Dial of Destiny. We're going to wrap up this movie, how this movie couldn't quite wrap up the franchise sentimentally. And we're going to start out with the best of the best weapon. Nick, what are you bringing to the table for a nomination?
I landed on Roman Spear here. Where'd you land?
Hear me out. Dial of Destiny Dynamite. How's that for the dynamite
DDD.
stick that the DDD that Helena brings out as a it's not so much. It's tough because it's not so much a weapon and more of a distraction.
Dynamite's a weapon.
I mean, it could be a weapon but in this movie, it was more of a distraction. So it's tough because Roman Spear did literally kill a guy. But I think just the selling point, if you trademark Dial of Destiny Dynamite, that's dynamite. So where do we land?
For the sake of having it in the bracket, Dynamite is our winner.
Hell yeah.
I'm into it. Let's go.
All right. Stick of dynamite is the best weapon of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
Let's transition to the next mini pop, as we do in every single podcast. Our best fighter. And for me, James, it's still Indy. We had a fight where we were up against a 1960s car and a tuk-tuk. And there was a moment where Indiana Jones opened the door of the car and with a swing kick, kicked a man through the window, killed him, had another guy that he jumped onto a motorcycle, had him run over by a few cars. The best kill count here is still Indiana Jones in his old age.
That's fine if Indy still has it. And if he had the highest kill count, we all know Indiana Jones is no stranger to murder, which is fine with us because
his lifetime kill
plucky.
count, where do you think he lands? Like lifetime. We're talking
35.
Temple of Doom.
35.
Yeah, I think that's a good over-under. It's a good over-under. He's ended quite a few lives.
The problem is that Indiana Jones has already been nominated and inducted into the Best Fighter Hall of Fame for 2024 via The Last Crusade. So, Nick, I'm going to hit you with my nomination. Close runner-up, second place. It's going to be Hawk, which is Oliver Richards. He is a Dutch-born actor and professional bodybuilder. Nick, the Dutch Giant.
He is a monster.
7'2", 350 pounds. His proportion of his height to his muscle mass is insane. He's literally a superhero.
He would make Shaq look small. That's nuts.
And for that reason, and all of the one arm choking guys out, throwing them up against the ceiling of a helicopter, just the pure brute force. This guy, Hawk, big henchman Hawk, deserves to be in the Best Fighter bracket. Just from his physicality, honestly.
I'm into it. I also love that every Indy movie involves an oversized henchman.
Always has a brute. Always has an oversized henchman.
Always. I'm into it. Hawk. Hawk is our best fighter from Dial of Destiny. All right, James. Best fighter into our MVC, our most valuable character of this movie. Who do you got?
So protagonist, Indiana Jones. I feel like that's always too easy. Obviously, it's not an Indiana Jones movie without Indiana Jones, but I think we need to go with the unsung heroes here. Helena, I think, was a really good addition to the movie, but I think we both agree that little kid Teddy flying the plane, being the comic relief of the movie, Teddy is MVC for us. I almost nominated handcuffs as best weapon because he uses handcuffs to take down our best fighter of Hawk by handcuffing him to a iron bar underwater. Teddy killed a guy.
That was ruthless. That was ruthless.
Right? Pretty ruthless.
Yeah. Hawk is fighting for his life, struggling for air, going, rah, rah. And Teddy's just like, no, swims off, and Hawk drowns in the water. Every big guy's weakness is water. They're just too heavy.
Or an airplane propeller. Or a treadmill.
Or no.
What was that thing?
It was like a
belt? A belt? Like a rolling belt? What do you call those?
Belt. Yeah, it was like a machine belt. It was like a gosh, dude, I'm blanking right now. It was
an
like
assembly line belt? Oh, we're struggling.
Yes, assembly line belt. An assembly line.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was thinking
the Temple of Doom.
That's what it was.
Which was also Pat Roach under Brownface as a big Indian temple guard.
And if you know anything about this podcast, we're big on Brownface. You can cut that out. Don't worry.
Yeah, what the hell? We're flagged now. Nick, that was a pretty big piece of shit thing to say, which is going to transition nicely into the biggest piece of shit of this movie. Who do you got?
Dr. Jurgen Voller, man. He's our big bad, but man, is he a piece of shit. I mean, step one, you're a Nazi. Step two, you're a reformed Nazi brought to the United States to be a scientist who is planning to go back in time, kill Hitler, and assume the role of Fuhrer with the Nazis. You kidnap kids. You have killed innocent people left and right. You killed our gal. I'm forgetting her name. The black gal who was the CIA worker, who was kind of a piece of shit too. I think her name was Mason in this movie.
She was Mason. Yep.
But Dr. Jurgen Voller, man, he could not let it go. He could not let the Nazism go.
No.
And anybody who can't let the Nazism go or was involved in Nazism, you get my biggest piece of shit vote every day of the week.
No question, no contest. The biggest piece of shit is going to be Dr. Voller. All right, Nick. Well, that's going to wrap up our mini pops, our awards for Dial of Destiny. Now we got to slap a stamp of approval or disapproval for the movie. Let's start out with our sarcastic selling points. I'm going to go first. This is time traveling 80-year-old Indiana Jones.
I don't love my sarcastic selling point. I wrote this at the beginning before I reconciled with my differences, but I'm going to say it no matter what. I said this is Indy without Spielberg. Now, I want to say I take this back because this was not an issue with Spielberg versus Mangold. It was what you said. It's 80-year-old Indy. Just is what it is.
Final review. Fight.
Okay, final review time. Here we go. We're going to talk about what the other guys think of Dial of Destiny. We're starting out with Rotten Tomatoes, the critics. 70% of the critics enjoyed this movie.
That they did. And jumping higher than that, James, the audience at an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes.
As always, we're going to just womp womp with Metacritic because the critics are going to score this with a 58. Translates to a 5.8 on the popcorn scale.
And the people here, James, are going to give this a 4.5.
Oof, tough look from Metacritic. And now Indiana Jones. Jumping time zones. Still kicking butt, and we done killed Mutt. Score from IMDb. A 6.5. Did we just turn back the clock and turn up the dial? Because it seemed like we were on the same page there, Nick.
We must have.
Always, forever, for all time, always. Nick, it is time to seal the deal on the franchise of the year, Indiana Jones. And we got to give the Dial of Destiny our scores. Your final score, my final score. And let's just straight send off this franchise. What do you got for a laughable log line, popcorn points, and final thoughts?
All right, James. Well, my laughable log line here is Indy is old, divorced, and has a dead son, like super dead. But he is so back with his new and possibly worst adventure. This is a 5.2 from me. It's the lowest of the franchise, and we did our franchise ranking, so this is no surprise. 5.2, it's a little better than middle of the road for me, so I'm not going to get into too much detail because we detailed it in a lot of our talking points here, but I was missing a lot of the emotional attachment, as we discussed, the clues and the mystery and the adventure and the figuring things out. It's still a 5.2 because it's still Indiana Jones and you still hit me with all the story beats, and Mangold did do a good job in the director's chair, and the budget really gave me probably some of the best chase adventure scenes that I've seen in an Indiana Jones movie. So the production value was still very high in this movie for me, but the storyline was still lacking. I feel like Indiana Jones is just a character floating in time at this point. There was no continuity from the last plot to this plot. I don't think it's a proper way to send off Indiana Jones. I wouldn't be mad if in 2027 they came out with one last one to give it some finality. If they did it correctly, maybe get Spielberg a little more involved, maybe get a little more of the classic Indy involved, but it's still a 5.2. It's a perfectly serviceable film for me. It's a perfectly fine entry in the Indiana Jones franchise, but it still is the worst one. That's not a huge indictment because the franchise overall has been pretty good up to this point, but that's where it lives for me. It's a 5.2. Would watch, but not a great installment in the franchise, in my opinion.
All right. Well, my laughable log line for Dial of Destiny is Indiana Jones cranks up the dial and turns back the clock with no control of his own destiny. And Nick, I am going to hit this with a 7.5.
Wow.
Now, I'm shocked that this is the worst one for you because I thought unanimously Temple of Doom was going to be the worst of the bunch because it was so different in such a horrible way. But We're not here to talk about Temple of Doom. We're here to talk about Dial of Destiny. My final thoughts on this movie is that I don't think it is a satisfactory send-off for Indiana Jones, but we talked about it. Can you really send off Indiana Jones? If you did, I think your best shot would be at the end of The Last Crusade. It was just the perfect ending for the original trilogy. But we as a society, they as filmmakers, they as a studio, us as an audience, we always want more. We want more Indiana Jones. We crave it. We asked for it. We drooled at the trailer when it first dropped, and mixed reviews. We got mixed reviews here on this podcast. You're hitting it in the mid scores. I'm hitting it at the 3/4 scores because I think it still hit all of the great parts about Indiana Jones very, very nicely. A lot of great action sequences, a lot of practical stunts. You can tell there's CGI in there. The intro to this movie is incredible. It's probably one of the best intros of the entire franchise. I think it's got an updated quality to the whole entire franchise. We weren't banking on everyone's just going to be happy to see that we're back, i.e. Crystal Skull. I felt like there was time and dedication and passion poured into this project that it does deserve some thumbs up here. But the major problem with this movie is just it felt like its mission was to stick the landing and to have an ending. And I think we've said it 3 different times. You can't have an ending for Indiana Jones. It's just another episode in the series. So I think just the shoehorning the story in really deduced some points for me. I still think the quality, the cinematography, John Williams still being involved for the score, it screams Indiana Jones. Not the best of the bunch. For me, confidently, I can say this is 3rd place out of 5. We've said our favorites. We've said our worst. I think this is a completely fine entry. It's just missing 25% to push it into that upper echelon of Indiana Jones fame. And I can proudly say I will watch this again. I thought this was a great movie. Had a lot of great performances in it. A lot of great qualities to it as a film in general. The money completely went to work. Unfortunately, it didn't make a total percentage back of what they were probably anticipating or hoping for, but I think it sits comfortably in the 7s for me.
I see where you're coming from. It's just I think we're just on 2 different perspectives, but I don't disagree with your breakdown. I don't think this is a bad movie. I think it's worth watching, and I will watch again because it is very indie, and I like indie. So
we like Indy. We love Indy. And Nick, you know what? There might not be finality to this movie, but that doesn't mean there has to be finality with your score, because whenever we hit the Rat Party, we do have opportunities to re-rank our scores in our movies. But for the time being, average score of the entire Indiana Jones franchise from you and from me and from our podcast as a whole, the franchise on average sits at a 7.28. Is that an accurate reflection of the franchise?
I honestly think it is, because we mentioned it a little bit there in our talk, but
you could have stopped at 3, but we asked for more and it bit us in the butt. So I think 7.3 is pretty fair. Pretty fair. My heart wants to say 8 because of how great the greats are. But mathematically speaking, just like Archimedes freaking vibed off of, which was mathematics, I think 7.3 is a pretty fair score for the entire franchise as a whole. But I would highly recommend it and rate it as an 8, because 8.5, because I love treasure hunting and I love Harrison Ford.
Hey, I'm in the same boat.
And that is that. And that is the Dial of Destiny. That's the entire franchise of Indiana Jones. And we appreciate you guys listening to us ramble on, talk about this movie, talk about these movies, the legacies, the Spielbergs. I loved all of the behind the scenes fun facts we brought up, the development stories we brought up. Just being with this character for the course of this year and the course of 40 cinematic years across theatrical releases has been such a pleasure.
They just don't make characters like that anymore.
We thank you for running away from boulders with us, drinking the blood of Kali with us, taking a leap of faith with us, watching a flying saucer yeet off into space with us, and going back in time with us. It's been such a pleasure, and we encourage you to keep following us and just keep up with us at Just Play It Podcast on Instagram and YouTube. We're on X at Just Play It Pod, and you're going to want to tune in next time because we're going to be getting into the season. It's the reason for the season. It's a Thanksgiving movie, and we're going to be on the road via 3 different ways, I believe. It's going to be sweet as candy, if you get what I'm saying. Thank you, everybody. We're heading gone. And remember, if you think you need to get back up in the saddle one more time, just make sure you go back in time.
Happily ever after, but Mutt is still dead.
Super dead.